have a couple of Instagram comments that I wanted to answer on video, not because they need me to answer these on video, but because they're issues that are, affect a lot of people and seem like good content. Trooper hardware store hatchet, made in Mexico, and what modifications should he do to improve it? Also, are those engravings on the handle useful? Any advice to improve this hatchet? Are the engravings on the handle good or not? Please help. Okay, first of all, this guy has sent me a lot of messages, private messages about what should I do with this, saw, axe, what do you think of these files? I spent a lot of time answering questions, kind of demanding. Most people get that I don't have a lot of time to answer a lot of personal questions, I have people emailing me stuff. I have like 700 unanswered flagged emails. A lot of which are stuff I should have answered, for real answered. So, at some point I'm just like, no more. But I'm going to do this one because I think that, people will find it interesting. Just not about just this hatchet, but hatchets in general. Like, you get a hatchet, what do you do with it, right? This is a real common question. And I haven't really addressed that thoroughly, and this won't be thorough either. But this will be the quick and dirty version that will get you up and functioning with some comments on this hatchet. So first, the hatchet looks interesting. It looks like a cheap hardware store hatchet, but the head is actually very well finished. And it looks very wedgy. There's no hollow grind behind the cheek. And it also doesn't look super blunt. It actually looks like, it's not that far off from being a good chopping hatchet. So that's interesting. So you can see on the pictures, the handle has these little grooves cut into it, obviously for grip. First things first, with any hatchet or axe, make it chop. Unless you're just using it for splitting, which just leave it and forget about it. If you're just splitting some kindling or a little firewood while you're car camping, just don't do anything to it. Maybe sharpen it a little bit or something like that, but don't worry about that. But assuming that this is a multi-purpose axe, if it's for, bushcrafting, whatever stuff people do, or if you're, any kind of subsistence, woods dweller, bush person, yeah, you want to make the thing chop first, not split. I really don't understand why I see all these videos of bushcrafters cutting short sections of log while they're camping and just for a fire pit, and then splitting them up into pieces and talking about how well an axe or hatchet splits. You can do that work very easily with an axe that is ground for chopping. Chopping should be the priority. Chopping is the thing you want to be efficient. You want that axe to bite well, you want it to cut deep. Grind your axes for chopping. Don't worry about hewing, carving. Set the thing up for chopping, and then get good at using it for everything else. That's my suggestion. So how do you do that? This is actually pretty simple, and you can apply this simple kind of geometry rule that's gonna work in basically every case. And it's very simple. You don't have to watch a bunch of videos on the perfect grind for your hatchet or axe or anything like that. Just do this, and you can nerd out about it later if you want to get geeky. Or I hope my hair is not too much of a disaster. Not that I'm vain or anything. That's actually the problem. But no man should really have to cut his own hair. We're ridiculous. We're no good. We're no good at that. I'm out in my blacksmith shop. Okay, so here's my blacksmith shop. My mirror is in front of the blacksmith shop. I don't have a bathroom. I don't have a real shower even. I have a hose hanging over the fence of the blacksmith shop. And my anvil's right here. So it's super awkward. And I should be standing where the anvil is standing. And I'm trying to cut my hair while looking in a mirror at the back. I don't have those skills. I'm a dude. I'm a bachelor dude, right? So anyway, so I need something longer here. But sometimes I do a pretty bad job. That probably doesn't surprise you. So if you take a straight file, which files should be straight, and lay it on the axe here, on this one, you're going to lay it on the eye here and then on the cheek there. And you don't want this. You don't want a bunch of space there. All this meat right here has to come off. What you want to do is file this stuff off until this comes close to the edge right there, while this is touching the eye. Now, really, I would say, you want to raise this up about 1/8 of an inch. So you could tape 1/8 of an inch slab of something to your file or to the axe head as a guide, Or just, while you're filing, just pay attention and try to hold it just that little bit above the eye. And then file it down until this bevel right there, the width of that single bevel at the edge is about, like for beginners, about 1/8 of an inch is good. Down to a 1/16th, but I wouldn't go much further than that. I usually go to about a 1/16th. And then as I sharpen it, it gets, a little blunter and more rounded back. If you do that to both sides, that axe will chop, assuming it's sharp. A lot of people think, mistakenly that it's about the sharpness of the edge. No, it's about this geometry right here. A semi-dull axe with this geometry will cut way better than a super duper extra sharp 10,000 grit Japanese water stone stropped with like eel skin and the ashes of virgin chipmunks or something. Do that to all multi-purpose axes. Now, there's going to be some debate about whether this should be straight right here or rounded, etc., etc. If you want to mess with that, that's fine. Consume other information or whatever. But this bulk in some way has to come off. And as far as splitting wood, it will still split wood fine, but that's up to you. Like, you have to use it in a skilled manner. It'll be fine for carving. Will it be the best? Maybe not. It's fine though. Don't worry about that. If you're new to hatchets, get a hatchet, set it up like this, and use it for everything. Just use it and use it and use it and use it and use it a lot. And if you can do everything with that hatchet, this is valuable. The most important thing in axemanship is the axeman and their skill and the time that's been put in on the butt end of that handle. Like, there's just no substitute. This is why I started the Cordwood Challenge. Just use it more, use it more. I do not own a single carving hatchet. I'm like the axe guy. I don't own a single carving hatchet. Do I want one? Meh, sure. If I was doing a lot of carving, like carving professionally, I might just go, get one, start messing with them, trying them out, figuring out what's good. But it's of much more value to me, always has been, to be able to take what I have and then do everything with it. Invest in yourself first. Invest in yourself. Stop shopping. Start chopping. Stop. So as far as the head goes, the other thing I really like this modification here. I've only done it to this hatchet, but I will probably do it to every single hatchet that I ever get from now on, if it doesn't have like ears and cutaways on it already. I like it much better for handling, which is really important to me because I play with my tools a lot. This sits much, much better in my belt, which is how I carry my hatchets, tucked in my belt. Just slipped right through the belt and kind of hooked on, the belt like that. It's also probably stronger because it's longer. So this whole distance is longer than if it was straight across. And it also, spreads the stress out more rather than having it just like come straight across and having this, blunt, straight union of wood and metal. I did this with a coarse file. Totally unnecessary, but I like it. If you have the head off, consider doing it. The handle length I like is 16 inches. For me, this is the magic number. Below 15 inches, I start to get kind of like, I don't really like this. Beyond 16 inches, same thing. I'm like, this is, it's just too long. I don't want it any longer than 16, but I want that 16. It gives me a lot more leverage. With this handle configuration right here, I can grab it like off the edge a little bit. Like that far. Look at the length I have there for actually, chopping. But when it's tucked in my belt, it's not too much. It's not like catching on brush too much, a little bit. Once in a while it'll catch something. But it just gives you much more functionality. If you're splitting and you're holding way back here, you have a lot more leverage. And that's really handy when your head is only, this light dinky thing like that. My handles are straight. The ones that I make are basically always straight. This one I put this little back curve right here, and I really like that. It actually works well when I'm gripping like way down here or slightly off the handle. So I do like that. I like this, substantial hook right there. so I don't lose grip on it. I can really hold on to it. The handle on that chopper looks like it's about 12 inches long. That's way too short for me. I would be a lot more interested in that hatchet and testing it and recommending it possibly if it had a 15 or longer inch handle. And of course the handle is way too thick. This is just what we see in almost all modern axes. It's ridiculously thick. I would take a lot of that bulk off. As far as the grip goes, it has this little grip down here. I'll lose that. I don't want any grip on any handle. This is dead smooth, polished from use, not from sandpaper. The transition with this rawhide collar is very smooth. There's a little texture back here, but I just don't want any texture, any grip, any speed bumps, nothing. So I would lose that. If you need that grip for some reason, you're probably using your hatchet wrong. Don't take a death grip on it and try to like swing at stuff super, super hard. You know, when I'm using this to chop, like serious chop, like I'm trying to cut deep to cut down a small tree or buck something or split something, I still have a very light grip on it, right? I'm using the handle to swing and like fling, whip the head into the work. I'm not taking a death grip on it, hitting the thing, and then trying to push the head through the work. Don't do that. That's bad technique. So if you feel like you need grip, you probably just need to use the tool more and lighten up on your technique. Would I replace the handle on that hatchet? Not as a beater, maybe not as a beginner, but I wouldn't use that very long before I'm just like, screw this thing. I'm either replacing the handle or I'm going to get something else. That's what I have to say about that. Next question is about this axe, the Husqvarna Forest axe, which is kind of a multi-purpose, lightweight, packable axe. Okay, that's about hides, that's about apples. I enjoy watching YouTube videos about splitting firewood on the ground. I've recently started attempting to cut wood with one axe. Kudos to you. You'll learn a lot doing that, especially with this axe, a Husqvarna forestry axe, as opposed to a splitting maul. In my first few swings, even into saw-cut upright logs, I found I was gouging the handle just below the bit. Made a leather overstrike guard, but it's taking a lot of abuse in a short amount of time, mostly from burying the bit into a split that is narrower than the handle is wide. Okay, that's important. In your video, you mentioned using Husqvarna forestry axe for a period of time. Did you make a steel guard for it or something? Is my technique really just that poor? My handle is making contact so frequently. I'm quite curious if I should modify my axe or my technique to keep my axe handle safe. Good question. First of all, watch all of my videos all the way through on this axe. There's a whole series in there. I talk about how ridiculous, ad nauseum, how ridiculously thick the handle is, like in great specific detail that makes people mad. It's so specific and detailed. When the axe comes from the factory, the handle is much fatter than the head. That makes no goddamn sense. Okay, why would anyone think that's a good idea? Don't do that. You know, take this off until it's, you know, the same as the axe head or slightly, you know, narrower. It has to be, you know, fatter than the eye, because otherwise the, you know, axe head would just keep going. It has to be stopped by a little bit of extra flare right here, but not very much. So that's the first thing. Now, if he's talking about like he did that and then he put this like leather collar on and that's getting damaged because it sticks way out, well, yeah, I mean, I don't really like leather collars much. I would prefer rawhide. I have a, you know, video series on the hatchet we just looked at, has a rawhide collar. I have a video on that. If you want to make a rawhide collar and you don't have rawhide, people have commented that they've used dog bone, like rawhide dog bone chew toys. Just soak that in water until you can start to tease it apart and work it. And also Kevin at Kevin's Disobedience, who now runs the Cordwood Challenge, he has a video on, apparently we had a conversation that I don't remember, but about gluing the rawhide on instead of sewing it on, which he did and it worked. Go watch that video. And that's a very easy, relatively cheap way. You're going to be able to dry out the rest of that rawhide to use later. If you can glue it on, you know, instead of sewing, that saves a ton of time. So yeah, if you're going to use a guard, I would do that. Most of my axes do not have guards, but I think they're a good idea, especially for firewood splitting. I would prefer that all axes that I split with, you know, a lot would have a collar of some kind, because it just allows you to be a little less careful, and it also takes care of the inevitable things that happen. You know, if you're serious about splitting wood and you're just not being insanely anally careful with your axe handle, it's just, you know, things happen. Most of my wood splitting on saw cut rounds is with a fiberglass handled maul, and I have beat the living crap out of that thing. Like if I know the handle's going to hit the wood, I don't even care. I want to split wood. I want to get the wood split fast, and I don't want to have to worry about the handle. So that's the only place I use fiberglass handles. But I love that thing. It feels awful, but I don't use it for really long periods of time. And man, is it tough. So other than that, there are technique things that you can do. So the first one I would suggest is try using the axe head as a lever by using people call it the flick or the twist, where you either come down with the axe at an angle like this. When you hit the wood, a lot of the energy and the momentum in this mass is going to kick like that sideways, and it's going to pop the wood off. You're not trying to add energy. You're just taking the energy that you're already going to have in the swing, and you're just using it a little bit differently. You're using it with this mechanical advantage of a lever. It's a short lever, but it's a lever with a lot of energy and mass behind it. And it's remarkably effective. So that's just going to use that energy in some cases a little bit more effectively, and your axe is not going to go through the wood. So I will split, rounds of wood on the ground that are really short, where, with an axe that's ground for chopping, and I can hit that thing and pop it like that, and the axe isn't going to go into the dirt. Even though the thing's on the ground, there's only, 10 inches between the bit and the earth. So if you get good at that, that'll prevent a lot of those problems. It's not always the best technique for every single situation, application, log, but it's very useful and you can use it most of the time. The other stuff is just, strategy stuff and paying attention to what you're splitting. So let's say we have a log and you want to split this off here, but your bit is only that wide. Something like that. Sometimes the wood will go like this and then it'll split that way. And this will come off, but you're left with this hard edge of wood here, goes through and smack right here on the handle. This is not always predictable, and you can't always say, well, I'll just split less off. Well, do you want a thin, tiny little slab? Because look at the width of this bit, So that stuff will just happen. But this is where that flick technique could really pay off. But things like this do just happen. You can't always predict how the wood's going to split. I don't know what to tell you about that, except just keep paying attention to what you're doing and try to start predicting what you think is going to happen each time. And there's really no, substitute for being on the end of the axe swinging it a lot. Thin the handle down. Rawhide collar for sure, especially if you're using it for splitting a lot, but even for anyone that's new to axes, until you get comfortable and you stop smacking the handle a lot, it just happens, It happens in limbing a lot, it happens in splitting an extra lot. Put a guard on it, but don't wrap a big, in my considerable opinion, as I like to say, I really don't like any kind of very thick things on here. If I do rawhide, I'm going to thin the rawhide down and then taper it down here at the edge so that, there's a real smooth transition, and it really, there's not much like tactile influence when I'm tactile influence. I'm ready to go to bed. Influence while I'm like sliding my handle up and down, hand up and down the handle. If you get one of these axes, make yourself sit through that whole thing, even though it's pedantic and I repeat myself a lot because I don't know what I said in the last video. It's worth it, and do the modifications I recommend after you use the axe a little bit, and I think that you'll be happy that you did. Stop shopping, start chopping. Put in time with your axes, especially, the hatchet. The hatchet is such a great multi-purpose tool. I've been a big fan of hatchets for so long, and I've been appalled at all the people I know, in the primitive skills scene, like mountain men rendezvous types, whatever. People that should have hatchets just don't have hatchets, or they have some beater that isn't sharp, it isn't ground to perform, just some stock piece of crap that's barely sharp or not sharp. This is a fantastically useful tool. If you set it up like this one, you can do so much with that thing. If I have to, I can do a pretty incredible amount of work with this tool, but it's because I've put in the time with it, you know, and many, many other hatchets, and much lighter hatchets than this too. And I've made them work, and I've adapted and invested in myself, invested in my skills. That's the most important thing in axemanship. Get behind that thing, stop shopping, start chopping, chop a lot, carve a lot, split a lot, see what you can get away with, instead of saying, oh, well, another axe would be better for this, I better buy another axe. Like the Husqvarna guy said, committed to use this axe for a bunch. Great, that's awesome. You're going to learn so much, and you're going to chop circles around people who are just, you know, not spending the time. You just got to spend the time. And if that's not fun and that's not what you want, okay, good luck with that. So be safe. Sharp, heavy pieces of steel on the end of sticks are insanely dangerous. Make sure you go home every day with all your fingers intact, with the same length of toes and same number of toes that you left with, and without embarrassing visits to the emergency room and expensive hospital bills.